It's 4 a.m. The air is thick with heat that never left from the day before. Your hands are bleeding, not from today, but from yesterday and the day before that, and every single day stretching back as far as your memory will take you. You haven't eaten in 16 hours. Your back aches in places you didn't know a body could ache. Your feet are wrapped in torn cloth because shoes were never given to you. And the worst part, the part that will haunt you when you finally understand it, is that this is a good day. Nobody was dragged away screaming today. Nobody was sold. Nobody was beaten in front of their children this morning. So yes, by the brutal mathematics of this world, today is a good day. And you are still here, still breathing, still surviving the unsurvivable. That is where our story begins. Most of us have heard the word slavery. We learned it in a classroom somewhere between a math lesson and lunch break. We saw it briefly in a textbook, maybe a paragraph, maybe two, and then the chapter moved on, like the whole thing was just a footnote in an otherwise triumphant American story. Some of us saw it in movies, dramatized, scored with emotional music, wrapped up in a 2-hour narrative with a beginning, a middle, and some kind of resolution that let us exhale and walk out of the theater feeling something. But what we have never done, what almost none of us have ever been forced to truly reckon with, is actually lived it. Not even for an hour. Not even in our imagination, in the real, unfiltered, minute-by-minute brutality of what it actually was. So today, that is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to walk through one single day, 24 hours, and I am not going to soften it. I am not going to look away. And I promise you, if you stay with this video until the very end, you will not walk away the same person who pressed play. Because here is what they did not teach you in history class, and what I need you to understand before we go 1 second further. The system of slavery in 1776 America was not simply brutal. Brutal would almost be too simple a word for it. It was designed, architected, engineered with the kind of cold, deliberate intelligence that took every possible avenue of resistance, every possible flicker of hope, every possible path toward freedom, and systematically closed it off. It was built to break every single part of a human being. The body first, then the mind, and if those two weren't enough, it came for the soul. And it did this not chaotically, not randomly, but with a structure, a legal framework, a social code, and an economic engine that made the whole machine nearly impossible to stop. This is the world that real people woke up inside of on July 4th, 1776, the very same day that a group of educated, eloquent men in Philadelphia signed a document declaring that all men are created equal. Roughly 500,000 human beings on American soil woke up that morning in chains. And what you are about to hear is their story, not a summary, not a statistic, a story, a real, breathing, terrifying, heartbreaking story that happened on real soil, in real fields, in real cabins, under a real American sky. Stay with me, because the people in this story deserve more than a paragraph. Before we go any further, I want you to do something for me. I want you to stop thinking of this as history. I know that is a strange thing to ask, but the moment we file something under history, we give ourselves permission to process it from a distance, like we are watching it through glass, safely separated from it by time. What I want you to do instead is place yourself inside of it, because this video is not really about the past. It is about human beings, about what the human body can endure, about what the human mind does when it is systematically stripped of every freedom. About what happens to a person, a real, feeling, thinking, dreaming person, when the entire weight of a legal system, an economy, and a social order comes down on them every single morning before the sun has even risen. So here are the questions I want you to carry with you through every minute of this video. First, could you physically survive the labor? Not the idea of it. The actual, raw, unrelenting physical demand of working from before sunrise till after sunset, 6 days a week, in brutal southern heat, with inadequate food, inadequate water, and no medical care worth speaking of. Second, could you survive the psychological warfare? Because the physical labor, as punishing as it was only one layer of this system. The deeper layer, the more calculated layer, was what it did to your sense of self, your identity, your dignity, your understanding of your own worth as a human being. And third, what would happen if you reached your breaking point and ran? If you decided that whatever waited in the dark woods beyond the plantation was worth the risk, what was actually out there waiting for you? What had already been built to stop you? By the time this video is over, you will know the answers to all 3 of those questions. And I think at least one of them is going to genuinely shock you. But first, I need to build the world. I need to show you exactly where you just woke up. And before we go any deeper into this story, we would love to know where in the world you are watching from right now. Drop your city, your state, or your country in the comments below. We genuinely read them, and it means everything to know this story is reaching people across the country and across the world. And if you are not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss any of our upcoming videos, because we have stories coming that you absolutely cannot afford to miss. The year is 1776. The place is a tobacco plantation somewhere along the James River in Virginia, though it could just as easily be a rice plantation in South Carolina, or a cotton operation further south, or any one of thousands of estates scattered across the 13 colonies where the entire economic model depended on one thing and one thing alone: the unpaid, coerced, brutalized labor of enslaved African men, women, and children. The plantation we are standing on today belongs to a man we will call Mr. Harlan Whitfield, a landowner of considerable wealth and considerable standing in his community, a man who attends church on Sundays, who is considered by his neighbors to be a fair and reasonable gentleman, and who owns, on paper, 63 human beings. Among those 63 people is a man we will call Samuel. Samuel is 26 years old. He was born on this plantation. He has never seen the world beyond its borders, not because he has not thought about it, but because the borders of this plantation are, for all practical purposes, the borders of his entire legal existence. His mother, a woman we will call Ruth, was brought to this plantation from the coast of West Africa when she was 14 years old. She never spoke much about what that journey was like. On the rare nights when Samuel managed to ask her, she would grow quiet in a way that told him the silence was not absence, it was protection. Some things, she seemed to believe, were too heavy to pass down. Samuel's father was never named on any document, because documents about enslaved people did not record fathers. They recorded property. Samuel has a wife, a woman we will call Clara. Clara is 23. She is what the plantation records describe as a house servant, which means she works inside the main house, cooking, cleaning, laundering, tending to the needs of the Whitfield family from before the sun rises until after the family has gone to bed. The distinction between housework and field work is something that people outside this world sometimes assume represents a kind of privilege. And in the narrowest, most relative sense, there are small differences. Clara is less exposed to the elements, less subjected to the crushing physical labor of the fields. But do not mistake relative comfort for safety. House servants lived inside the constant, suffocating orbit of the enslaver's family. There was no boundary between work and life because there was no life that existed outside of work. Clara was never off. She was never unwatched. She was never, in any meaningful sense, alone. Samuel and Clara have a son. His name is Elijah. He is 4 years old. And Elijah, at 4 years old, is already the property of Harlan Whitfield. Not in some abstract or metaphorical sense. Literally, legally, on a written document, Elijah is listed among the plantation's assets. He is valued, in the ledger that Whitfield keeps in his study, at $30. A 4-year-old child. $30. This is the world Samuel wakes up inside of every single morning. This is the gravity he lives under. Not just the labor, not just the physical pain, but the constant, crushing awareness that everything he loves, his wife, his child, his mother, exists at the discretion of another man's financial decisions. That at any moment, for any reason or no reason at all, any one of them could be sold, moved, separated from him forever with no legal recourse, no appeal, no goodbye that the law was required to honor. Now, let us talk about the physical reality of Samuel's day, because I think once we walk through it, hour by hour, you will understand in a way that no history class ever managed to make you understand exactly why I opened this video by saying you would not survive it. It is 4:30 in the morning. The horn sounds. It is not a gentle sound. It is not the kind of sound that eases you from sleep into wakefulness. It is a hard, flat, demanding blare that cuts through the dark and gives you roughly 15 minutes to be standing in the field, tools in hand, ready to work. Not approximately ready. Ready. If you are late, the consequences are immediate and physical. There is no conversation about it. There is no second chance. The system has no patience for the language of mercy. Samuel has been awake for about 2 minutes. He has not eaten. There is no breakfast waiting for him. Not at 4:30. Not at this plantation. Some plantations provided an early morning meal. Many did not, or provided something so inadequate that calling it a meal would be a generosity. What Samuel has is a small amount of cornmeal left over from the night before, cold and stiff, that he eats standing up in the dark while pulling on his work clothes. Rough osnaburg fabric that scratches against his skin like burlap, because that is essentially what it is. Cheap, coarse, imported cloth that planters purchased in bulk specifically because of its low cost. His shoes, if you can call them that, are thin leather constructions that offer almost no protection from the rocky, root-crossed soil of the tobacco fields. He wraps a strip of torn cloth around a blister on his left heel that has been there for 3 weeks and has not been given time to heal. Clara is already awake. She has to be inside the main house before the Whitfield family stirs, which means her day begins even before Samuel's. She presses her hand against Elijah's sleeping face for a moment. Just a moment. Just the briefest pause in the forward march of the day, and then she is gone. Samuel watches her go. He does this every morning. He watches her disappear into that house, and he spends the rest of his day not knowing, in the full sense of that word, what is happening inside it. That uncertainty is not incidental. It is part of what the system does to a person. It takes the people you love most and places them just far enough away that you are always carrying a low, constant fear about them, but never close enough to do anything about it. By 4:45, Samuel is in the field. The tobacco crop in Virginia in 1776 is extraordinarily labor-intensive. Tobacco is not a crop that you plant and harvest twice a year and spend the time in between doing lighter work. Tobacco demands constant, hands-on attention across its entire growing cycle, planting the seeds in seed beds, transplanting the delicate seedlings by hand one at a time into the field rows, then endless weeding, because tobacco will not compete well with other plants, then topping, which means pinching off the flowering heads of each plant by hand to redirect its energy into the leaves, then suckering, which means going back through every plant and removing the secondary shoots that sprout. After topping, also by hand, plant by plant, row by row, across fields that stretch for acres. Then there is the hornworm, a large green caterpillar that destroys tobacco leaves, and enslaved workers were required to inspect each plant individually and remove the worms by hand. And all of this was done in Virginia summer heat that routinely climbed past 90 degrees, in humidity so thick the air felt physical, with no shade and no breaks of any meaningful length. Historical records from plantation account books and the personal journals of planters, documents that survive in archives at the Library of Congress, the Virginia Historical Society, and the collections of several major universities, describe daily labor quotas that required each field worker to tend to several thousand tobacco plants per day, not per week, per day. And those quotas existed regardless of weather, regardless of health, regardless of whether you had slept, regardless of whether you were injured. The overseer, a man we will call Graydon Hayes, a hired employee of Whitfield's who was paid specifically to maximize output and maintain what the planters called discipline, moved through the fields on horseback from before sunup to after sundown, and his authority over the people in those fields was essentially total. It is now 9 a.m. Samuel has been working for 4.5 hours. His hands are bleeding again. The tobacco plant has a tacky, slightly acidic residue that builds up on the skin over time and breaks it down. This was so well documented that historians and agricultural researchers have a specific name for it: green tobacco sickness. In the 1770s, nobody called it that. They just called it the work. Samuel's back is tight and burning. He has had nothing additional to eat since that cold cornmeal at 4:30. He drinks water when he can get to it, which depends on when and whether Hayes decides to allow the workers to stop moving. The heat today is already climbing. There is not a cloud in the sky. And here is where I need you to stop for a moment and really feel the weight of what I am describing. Because it is easy to hear these details and process them as information, as history, as something that happened to other people in another time. But Samuel is not other people. Samuel is a 26-year-old man with a wife and a 4-year-old son and a mother who crossed an ocean at 14 years old. He has dreams, historical accounts from formerly enslaved people, collected in narratives recorded by abolitionists, and later in interviews conducted by the Federal Writers Project in the 1930s, which gathered testimony from over 2,300 formerly enslaved people across the American South, make absolutely clear that enslaved people had rich inner lives. They fell in love. They told stories. They sang. They prayed. They argued about ideas. They made plans in their heads for futures they could barely let themselves believe in. Samuel is a full human being living inside a system that has decided, legally, that he is not one. It is now noon, the midday break. On this plantation, it lasts approximately 30 minutes. 30 minutes to eat. Today it is cornmeal again, sometimes supplemented with salt pork, sometimes with a few sweet potatoes, and to sit, to rest muscles that have been working for 7.5 consecutive hours before the horn calls again and the afternoon begins. Some planters allotted a longer rest during the hottest part of the day, not out of compassion but out of practical calculation. A worker who collapsed from heat exhaustion was a financial liability. But even this small pause was given and taken at the pleasure of the enslaver. It was not a right. It was a concession. The distinction mattered enormously because it meant it could always be removed. During this 30 minutes, Samuel sits with two men he has known his entire life. We will call them Thomas and Henry. Thomas is 41, which on this plantation makes him one of the elder men, and he carries that weight with a kind of quiet gravity that the younger workers have learned to read carefully. Henry is 19, strong and fast, and still, in some part of himself that the work has not yet reached, young enough to carry a kind of defiant energy that both Samuel and Thomas have learned to watch carefully, the way you watch someone walking too close to the edge of something. These three men eat quickly and say little. Words, in the presence of the overseer, are always a calculation. Everything is a calculation. It is 2 p.m. The temperature has peaked. Samuel is back in the rows, and the afternoon feels longer than the morning, not because it is, but because by this point the body has already given most of what it has. The muscles are not fresh. The mind is not sharp. The sun is direct and relentless. And there are still at least 4 more hours of work before the light begins to go. 4 more hours during which Hayes could decide, for any reason or no reason, that someone is not working hard or fast enough. 4 more hours during which Samuel is aware, in the back of every thought, that Clara is somewhere in that house and Elijah is somewhere on this property, and both of them exist, like him, entirely at the discretion of a man in a study making financial decisions. The architecture of broken minds. Here is what I need you to understand about the psychological dimension of this system, because I think it is the piece that gets lost most often when we talk about slavery in broad historical terms. The physical brutality was real, and it was severe, and we will get to the specifics of it. But the architects of American slavery in 1776 were not operating on brute force alone. They had built, over generations, a psychological infrastructure that was in many ways more durable than any chain. Consider what Samuel is legally prohibited from doing. He cannot read. Teaching an enslaved person to read in colonial Virginia was illegal, and the reasoning behind this law was not complicated. Literacy meant access to information. Information meant awareness of the wider world. Awareness meant the possibility of organized resistance. So the law removed literacy at its source. Samuel cannot write. He cannot legally gather with other enslaved people without white supervision, and the slave codes that governed colonial Virginia, which researchers at institutions including Harvard, Yale, and the Smithsonian have extensively documented, were remarkably specific in their restrictions. Enslaved people could not carry weapons, could not own property, could not testify in court against a white person, could not enter into a legal contract, could not legally marry, which meant that the bond between Samuel and Clara, as real and as deep as any bond between two human beings can be, did not exist under the law. It could be dissolved at any moment without legal consequence to anyone except Samuel and Clara. Now think about what this does to a person over time, not just physically, psychologically. When every mechanism of self-determination, every tool by which a human being normally builds identity, agency, and meaning, has been removed or made illegal, what happens to the self? This is not a philosophical question. The formerly enslaved people who gave testimony in the narratives collected by abolitionists like William Still and Frederick Douglass, and in the WPA interviews of the 1930s, describe this dimension of slavery with a clarity that the physical descriptions alone cannot capture. They describe a constant, grinding pressure on the sense of self. A world in which you were required to perform a version of yourself, compliant, diminished, invisible, because the alternative was violence. And performing that version of yourself, day after day, year after year, had consequences for the interior person. Consequences that the people who gave those testimonies spent years, sometimes decades, working to undo after emancipation. Frederick Douglass, whose autobiography, first published in 1845 and sourced extensively by historians studying this period, described the moment he began to learn to read as the moment he first truly understood the nature of his own imprisonment. Not because literacy gave him freedom, but because it gave him language to name what was being done to him. And naming it, he said, was the beginning of fighting it. But in 1776, in the field where Samuel is working, that naming was illegal. The system had made even the language of freedom a crime. And then there was the threat of sale. Of all the psychological weapons in this system, historians consistently identify the threat of sale as among the most powerful. Because it was not hypothetical. It happened constantly. Plantation records that survive from this period, held in archives at institutions including the University of Virginia, the College of William and Mary, and the National Archives, document the sale of enslaved people with the same matter-of-fact language as the sale of livestock. Parents separated from children, spouses separated from each other. The WPA narratives collected in the 1930s contain hundreds of accounts of families destroyed in exactly this way, and the emotional devastation those accounts describe, even 60 and 70 years after the fact, is some of the most difficult reading in the American historical record. Samuel knew this. He had seen it happen on this plantation. He knew that his family's togetherness was not a right. It was a current arrangement. And current arrangements could change on a Tuesday afternoon without warning. This is the weight that Samuel carried into the field every morning before 5 a.m. This is what he worked under, breathed under, survived under, every single day. And I want you to ask yourself honestly, how long could you carry that? How many days before it broke something in you that could not be repaired? After sundown, the hours that belonged to no one. It is now 6:30 in the evening. The light is finally thinning. The horn sounds again, not the 4:30 horn, but the evening horn, and it means the formal field work is done for the day. Samuel has now been working for 14 hours. 14 hours of tobacco cultivation in 90-degree heat. His hands look like something you would not want to look at directly. His back is a story of accumulated injuries, small strains and compressions and bruises that never got the rest they needed to fully heal, and so instead became a permanent background of pain that he now barely notices, because noticing it would not change anything. He walks back to the cabin. Clara is already there. The Whitfield family ate at 6, and once the cleaning was done, she was released back to the quarters. Elijah is awake, barely, clinging to the edge of sleep with a child's stubborn resistance to the dark. Samuel sits on the dirt floor and holds his son, and for this moment, this brief, specific, small moment, the day releases its grip just slightly. This is the part that does not make it into the history textbooks. The love, the way it persisted, the way it endured inside conditions specifically designed to destroy it. Samuel holds Elijah and Clara sits beside him, and in the dark of a dirt floor cabin in 1776 Virginia, 3 people who are listed in a ledger as property experience something that no ledger has ever been able to contain. But the night is not truly theirs. Not fully, because the night is also when the fear does its quietest work. The fear of what tomorrow holds. The fear of what the next week holds. The fear that comes from having seen, with your own eyes, what happened to James, a man on this same plantation, a man Samuel knew well, when James ran 6 months ago. James made it 4 days. 4 days into the woods, moving at night, eating whatever he could find, navigating by stars that he had learned to read from an older man who had tried once before him. 4 days before the slave patrol found him 12 miles north of the plantation, thin and exhausted and bleeding from a dog bite on his right calf that had gone 3 days without any treatment. James was brought back. What happened when he was brought back was witnessed by everyone on the plantation. It was designed to be witnessed. That was the point. Samuel does not sleep well. He has not slept well in years. He closes his eyes at around 9 p.m. because 4:30 a.m. is not waiting for anyone. And he lies in the dark and he thinks, the way people have always thought, the way that cannot be legislated or chained or sold, about what freedom might look like. Not the romantic, abstract version, the practical, specific version. What it would actually feel like to wake up in the morning and have the day belong to him. To decide what his hands would do today. To know that Elijah would grow up and that nobody could put a number on him in a ledger. He thinks about this. He has always thought about this. And the fact that he still thinks about it, the fact that the thought has not been completely extinguished, is perhaps the most quietly remarkable thing about Samuel. About all of them. What the 4th of July did not tell you. Here is the part of this story that I need you to sit with. Really sit with. Because we have walked through Samuel's day. We have felt the 4:30 horn and the 14 hours of labor and the bleeding hands and the psychological weight of a system designed to make freedom feel impossible. We have met Clara and Elijah and Thomas and Henry, and we have felt, I hope, the full human weight of who these people were. Not symbols, not footnotes, people. And now I need to give you the context that makes this story not just heartbreaking, but genuinely enraging in the way that real injustice should make a person feel. On July 4th, 1776, the same day that 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia and proclaimed to the world that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, Thomas Jefferson, the man who wrote those words, owned approximately 175 enslaved people. By the time of his death in 1826, that number had grown to over 600 across his lifetime. George Washington, who would become the first president of the nation those words founded, owned 317 enslaved people at his Mount Vernon estate when he died in 1799. James Madison, who is often called the father of the Constitution, owned over 100 enslaved people. These are not obscure historical details. These are facts held in the public record, documented by institutions including Monticello, Mount Vernon, and the National Archives, and confirmed by generations of historical scholarship. The men who wrote the language of liberty did so while holding human beings in chains on their own property. And this was not a contradiction they were unaware of. There are letters, diaries, private correspondence, documents that survive in archives and have been quoted by historians from Edmund Morgan to Henry Wiensek that make clear some of these men understood the contradiction perfectly well. They simply decided, in the calculus of their own time and self-interest, to set it aside, to declare freedom loudly in Philadelphia while enforcing chains quietly in Virginia. And the 500,000 people who woke up on July 4th, 1776, in conditions like Samuel's, they built the economy that made American independence financially viable, the tobacco that funded Virginia's colonial wealth, the rice that made South Carolina one of the richest colonies in the Americas. The infrastructure, the cleared land, the constructed buildings, the generated capital, all of it built on labor that was never compensated, never acknowledged in the founding documents, never named in the language of rights that the founders were so careful and so eloquent about on their own behalf. Samuel did not know the words of the Declaration of Independence. He could not read them, but he understood freedom. He understood it the way people always understand what they do not have, clearly, precisely, and at great cost. So let me come back to the question I asked you at the very beginning. Would you survive 24 hours as a slave in 1776 America? And I think you know now, after walking through Samuel's day, after feeling the 4:30 horn and the 14 hours and the fear and the love and the weight of a system specifically engineered to destroy every mechanism of human dignity, that the answer is almost certainly no. Not because you are weak, but because the system was not designed to be survived. It was designed to be endured, barely, with just enough to keep the labor going. It was designed to take everything that makes a person feel like a person and wear it down, day after day, year after year, until endurance became its own form of resistance. And yet, Samuel survived it. Clara survived it. Ruth, who crossed an ocean at 14 and never fully spoke of what that crossing was like, survived it. Thomas and Henry survived it. Millions of people, across 250 years of American slavery, from the first enslaved Africans brought to colonial Virginia in 1619 to the last people freed after the Civil War, survived something that should not have been survivable. They survived it, and they created music in the middle of it. They maintained family bonds across impossible distances, passing messages, walking miles at night to see each other, keeping names and stories alive through oral tradition because the written record was illegal. They organized rebellions. They developed complex escape networks that would eventually become the Underground Railroad. They educated themselves in secret at enormous personal risk because they understood, the way Frederick Douglass understood, that literacy was a form of liberation that no overseer could physically take once it was inside you. They held on to their humanity with both hands while a system that had the full backing of law, commerce, religion, and social order worked every single hour to strip it away. That is not a history lesson. That is the most extraordinary story of human endurance in American history, and it deserves more than a paragraph. The next time someone tells you that slavery was a long time ago, think about Samuel. Think about the 430 horn. Think about Elijah, for years old, listed in a ledger at $30. Think about Clara, moving through that house before sunrise, always watched, never off, never fully safe. Think about the July 4th document being signed 40 miles away from people who would never be named in it. Think about what was built in this country and who built it and what it cost them. And then ask yourself the question that I think this story is really asking, underneath everything else. Not whether you would have survived it, but whether you truly understand, in the full weight of the phrase, what it means that they did. This is not just history. This is the foundation. It is the ground beneath everything. And the people who laid it, in blood and labor and grief and love and extraordinary, unbreakable resilience, they deserve to be seen. Fully, not from a distance, not through glass, but up close, the way we have tried to see them today. Samuel, Clara, Elijah, Ruth, Thomas, Henry. These are not characters. They are composites of real people. People whose stories live in the slave narratives collected by abolitionists, in the WPA interviews of the 1930s, in the plantation records and account books and legal documents that historians have spent decades piecing together into the most complete picture we can construct of what daily life inside American slavery actually looked like. Their names are changed, but their experiences are not invented. Everything you heard in this video is drawn from the documented historical record. The labor quotas, the slave codes, the patrol systems, the legal prohibitions on literacy, the separation of families, the value of a 4-year-old child written in a plantation ledger. All of it is real. All of it is documented. All of it happened here. I want to ask you one question before you go, and I genuinely want you to answer it in the comments, because I think this is a conversation worth having. After everything you just heard, after walking through that 24 hours, what is the one thing that hit you hardest? Was it the legal framework? The psychological architecture of the system? The contradiction of the founding fathers? The love that persisted inside of it anyway? Tell me, because the comments on this video have the potential to be something extraordinary, and I want to read every single one. If this video moved you, share it. Put it somewhere someone who needs to see it will find it. These are the conversations that matter. These are the stories that should not stay buried in textbooks or footnotes or the margins of a history class. And if you are new here and you want more stories told this way, fully, without looking away, with the weight and the honesty that real history deserves, then subscribe. Hit the bell, because what we are building here is something important, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Thank you for staying. Thank you for watching. Samuel would have wanted you to know his story. Now you do.